It's time to end this. We've done the good things about Batman vs Superman, the bad things about Batman vs Superman, and now we're going to give you a little end credit sequence. The changes that we would make. 5 changes to be exact, and here is the first one. If it was up to me, the whole movie would be torn apart and restructured in a style more similar to Pulp Fiction than to the Avengers. For the first act, we would be following Lex Luthor. We'd follow Lex from his introduction when he's playing basketball with the Senator until the end of that storyline when the Senator is destroyed in the explosion. From there, we would jump to Batman, where we would start by going back in time to the destruction of Metropolis, and we would go up until the point where he's standing on the rooftop in the Batsuit. From Batman with the bat signal, we would then jump back in time to Superman when he is in Africa and follow his storyline through until it reaches the point that he is on the Gotham rooftop too. The fourth act then could play out essentially as it does, but everyone's story is clearly defined and it doesn't get so damn murky. All of their stories interlace multiple times anyway, so it's not as if we wouldn't see Batman or we wouldn't see Superman through the other people's stories, we just wouldn't see them as clearly. And that is what would mark out Superman's entrance the best. By removing Superman from the first time we see the Senate bombings, it just seems to us like Lex Luthor has made an attack on the US government. We don't even know that Superman was in there. And then the first time that we see Superman, not Clark Kent, but Superman, is when Batman drives into him with the Batmobile. The second change I would make to Batman vs Superman is with the nightmare sequences. What I would do is structure them to come after Lex Luthor has entered the Kryptonian vessel. From there, the destruction would play out much as it does. We'd follow it from Batman's perspective, or at least we think that it's Batman's perspective. At the end of the nightmare sequence, it would be revealed that we weren't seeing it from Batman's eyes at all. Actually, we're seeing it from Lex's eyes. And then we have an actual good reason for him to really hate Superman. The knowledge of 100,000 worlds that he's gained from the Kryptonian vessel has given him enough foresight to know just what could happen. And by knowing that Batman is the one variable that could push humanity to or from destruction, it would actually give him a reason to make them fight, rather than just him setting up a boxing match. Number 3. Comic book characters. Now, this certainly isn't to say that all characters should be exactly as they're interpreted in the comics, but you'd have thought there'd be some basis for what they're doing in the movie. You can't say, it's a comic book movie, come and see it, comic book fans, and then change it from what it is in the books. So when we get a Lex Luthor that is more Heath Ledger's Joker, or a Batman who is, well, kind of also Heath Ledger's Joker, it's a really big shift. Fans have been waiting for years to see a Batman vs Superman movie, and instead what we got was a miserable Superman and an even more miserable Batman being forced to fight by a villain that we don't even recognize. With DC promising this to be more comic book than movie, it's kind of a little bit surprising that they went so off track. Which leads me quite nicely into part 4, Batman and Superman. Now, I know I listed this as one of the main problems with the movie in my last video, and that's exactly the reason that this needs to be changed. The only sign we get of these two best friends being brothers in arms is when Batman rescues Martha Kent and says, "I'm a friend of your son's." And we think, no you're not. 2 seconds ago, you were trying to impale him with a kryptonite spear until it turned out that your mums had the same name. What about all of those criminals that you've killed whose mums also happen to be called Martha? These are 2 of the most recognizable characters in the whole world, not just in comic books, but in all media. And so for them to be gotten so wrong is not just surprising, it's actually kind of insulting. Not only is it insulting to the fans who have been reading these characters for over 75 years, but it's also insulting to the creators who originally made these characters, who wouldn't even recognize them if they saw them on the screen. And speaking of creators, part 5. I have to change Zack Snyder and David Goyer. Look through David Goyer's previous work, and you'll find it difficult to find a movie that he's written that wasn't helmed by a visionary. He's made a whole career off of writing the Blade movies and off of the Batman movies. Granted, Blade 1 was fine, Blade 2 was good with Guillermo del Toro on top of it. Blade 3 was a disaster, as was Blade the series that he was involved in. He wrote Batman Begins, and The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, the first two of which are brilliant movies, but all three had Christopher Nolan's production team working on them. Jumper is a movie that has been forgotten about. Flash Forward was a TV show that nobody watched. Da Vinci's Demons? Cancelled. Constantine? Cancelled. And the exact opposite is true for Zack Snyder. All of his best work has either been a direct adaptation of someone else's or a remake. The three movies he's had the most creative input into, being Sucker Punch, Man of Steel, and Dawn of Justice, have not been well received at all. And these two creators have been given free reign over the DC universe to do anything that they want. Granted, Chris Terrio, the writer of Argo, was also one of the writers on this. But that just goes to show that the Warner Brothers aren't entirely sure what they're doing. Now, with Ben Affleck's new Batman film, he seems to be writing it, possibly directing it, and obviously starring in it. But as he scripts it, he's doing so with Geoff Johns, the DC comic book writer. Say what you will about Geoff Johns, but he is a staple at DC who knows the characters through and through. Where was he in Batman vs Superman to step in and say, maybe Batman shouldn't be killing all of those guys? It's been said numerous times that Batman v Superman is a comic book movie for comic book fans. But I don't believe that to be true at all. Comic book fans know that Batman and Superman are more than just men, they are both symbols who don't just run away because people don't like them. Batman never stops being Batman because his work is never finished. And Superman doesn't stop being Superman because he knows, no matter their intentions, there are things that he can do that others can only dream of. So when you have the symbol for hope being impaled through the chest while people still doubt him, and you have the symbol of justice murdering people in his car, you're not comic book fans making a comic book movie. You're teenage boys with the same hard-on for destruction that made people criticize Man of Steel. So those are my changes that I would make to Batman vs Superman. Who would you have replace Zack Snyder and David Goyer if you could? Or would you not? Would you leave them in there and just to see where they go with the Justice League? Let us know, and thank you for joining us on Awful Commentary. We'll see you next time.